Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the 13th Fleet After Action Report. I am Chris, and I am here to talk about some Armada and some X-Wing. We're going to be talking about a lot of X-Wing this week, actually, as I just got back from the Derby Comics and Games Store Championship, which was a lot of fun. Great store to play in. I highly recommend going out and checking it out. I know that they are anticipating having another event there, not in the too far distant future. But in order to talk about that and to finish the discussion from last week on Oddball, I have a couple of special guests with me this week. First off, I have Chris Emmick, who has been playing X-Wing for a very, very long time and is also a very good tournament organizer as well as player. And then I also have the champion from this weekend's tournament, Dexter Ollis. So we are going to be talking a lot about the tournament itself. But again, I wanted to start by finishing the discussion on Oddball. Because I didn't have anybody joining me the last time. Unfortunately, there was a prior commitment from Chris, so he wasn't able to share in this discussion on Oddball. So
my bad.
Things happen, you know. So what we want to do is go ahead and take a look at, what exactly does Oddball do, and give me just a moment so that I can kick this display and have it running. And that is not exactly the way that I wanted to do that, but it might help if I did that in the right window. Okay. Let's see here. Alright, so what makes Oddball such a pain in the butt? Let's go ahead and I guess we'll go ahead and start with you, Chris. What are you looking at that you feel like makes Oddball a pain?
Show on the screen how much he is. Squad points cost. It's 4. It's right there at the top.
Yeah. Squad. Yeah. Ship cost 4.
4. Yeah, that's it. He's got a lot of great abilities. For an Arc 170, he's also got an extra. Is it a hull or a shield? I can't remember which. But he basically has an extra health. So he's a 10 health ship. And can take damage for other ships, and can pass tokens and focus and evade tokens if necessary. All of those are great abilities, and would be worthy of paying 5 points for. Him at 4 points, just really, really too strong.
Well, let's not forget he can double tap too. I mean, as if all the defensive stuff was not enough, he double taps.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody that flew like Boba Fett for a good while, and veteran turret gunner, and gauntlets with veteran turret gunner, you have to position yourself appropriately and have your opponent come in from multiple angles to get that value for a veteran turret gunner. And so, round 3, 4, 5, you are positioning, your ship sideways in order to try to get those double taps, and that completely limits where that ship can run to in future rounds. So VTG is itself not that bad, but VTG plus all the other abilities is strong, and then make it 4 ship points, and you have just an incredibly strong foundation for a list.
So how'd that fit into your list there, Dexter?
Yeah, in mine, Honestly, I don't like in my list. You'll see in the championship final round, and I think honestly all day, the way that my list is set up, I honestly don't take full advantage of everything Oddball can do. It can be hard to, especially the way that I try and run mine, and some of that is things that I could do better, and some of that is just the way that he slots in with how I like to use him. I mean, just the three dice gun for 4 points at I5 with a lot of health with six hull and like Chris said, the extra shield up to 4 shield feels nice to me. And then I can slot him with Selfless is really nice. Put him next to Shock T. It's pretty vital for the way that I like to run my list. So he's usually right next to Shock T going, 2 straights. Sometimes if he has to go 4 straights to keep up, he will. And keeps her alive while being able to put out a lot of damage. Just, take a target lock, fire. Sometimes get the double mod with the focus and target lock from Shock T or Axe. And I don't know, he's just good for 4 points. He does everything you could want and more. And at I5.
I think that's pretty much what we boil it down to. 4 points. 4 points is man. I mean, my list is built around a decimator, and that decimator is 7 points. So, that's like half of what my key piece is. And I did have the pleasure of getting to play against Dexter, and we ended up at a draw. I think part of that is because I paid a little bit more attention to objectives than Dexter did. But other than that, I mean, you're forced to try to figure out how you're going to approach it, because, I mean, 10 hull is a lot to really spend time on. I say 10 hull, but 10 total damage. There's a lot to spend time on, and you're only getting 4 points out of the deal.
Yeah, I think right now that's Oddball is that foundation for a lot of strong Republic lists. He can be melted by lists that have a bit more punch to them. Say a couple of X-wings running proton torpedoes or what have you. But any other list that can't guarantee 3-4 dice attacks on him, especially with our scenarios where you only get half points in one of the scenarios, chance engagement, he's just going to hold those 4 points no matter what. And so he's just a really, really strong piece overall. The trick is looking at what your opponent is doing with Oddball and figuring out where those kill points can come from. Whether it's trapping a Jedi late in the game or picking off some support pieces or what have you. And sometimes you are not in the on setup, you're not on the right position to do that, right? You just gotta make do with what you can do. But trying Oddball is definitely the bait for your opponents to take, and if you can help it, don't take the bait.
Yeah, he is a trap. I mean, figuring out
Admiral Akbar would be proud.
Figuring out your target priority is just absolutely vital when you're dealing with Oddball on the board, because, I mean, the other thing is that, of course, if you do choose another target, you've got to still pay attention to where Oddball is, because they're going to be passing off crits if he's in range, I mean, Dexter knows I checked in our game, and I was like, okay, is this guy in range of Oddball? Can I shoot him?
Yeah, against your bombers, that was like your first priority is where can I shoot that's not going to be affected by Oddball?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, and it actually caused me to be in a bad position, and my bombers got melted. I mean, there's no two ways about that. But that actually leads into a great segue to start talking about the Derby Comics and Games Store Championship, which, again, a lot of fun, great store to be in. love the amount of space that we had in there. You know, I've gotten used to playing in some smaller spaces. But you know, let's we could go ahead and talk about our days there. You know, sharing first round stories. I can tell you, man, my first round was rough. Because my first round was actually just trying to figure out how to get everything set up for the stream. We were having some computer issues, and so I did get to watch the bad time that Chris was having there. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I was playing something kind of brand new. I'd been kind of messing around with different scum builds focused around Darth Maul and the Gauntlet for most of the second half of this year, and I just couldn't find a combination that worked. And so I kind of decided late on Friday to switch to something else that had kind of caught my eye that I had seen on, I believe it's the Turn Zero podcast. Some of the guys there were talking about it, where they created a rebel base of benthic tubes, the U-wing that can pass a focus token to another friendly ship at within range 2, and Harrison Dola in the A-wing, who can then pass a focus, a target lock, or an evade to a friendly ship while that ship attacks or defends. And so the trick with those two is you put Perceptive Copilot on Benthic, so he gets 2 focus tokens when he focuses. You put Jyn Erso on Benthic, so that way when a ship receives a focus token, you can change it into an evade instead. And then you pass a focus to Hera, and Hera then has the option of either taking an evade or taking a focus action herself, and which would leave her with 2 tokens that she can pass around. And so that makes trying to focus fire on the initial engagement very difficult for my opponents. I surrounded those two with Finn Rao and the Fang Fighter, Boudica Venge in the Fang Fighter. That's the one that double taps when another ship attacks another friendly. And then I also had Sabine Wren in the TIE. And I play with Fangs kind of occasionally. I'm not anywhere. I wouldn't consider myself an ace player or a Fang player at all. You gotta play those guys a lot differently, and knowing the right amount of aggressiveness to get within range 1, get those defensive bonuses without just completely missing the mark and then getting melted in 2 or 3 shots. And so I was playing Joe Franch, longtime Vol player, one member of the Stay on Target podcast, just an all-around awesome guy, and he was playing an Imperial list with 3 bombers, and I think on round 2, his Decimator got within range 3 of my Sabine and rolled all 3 natural hits, and my Sabine, because I had repositioned instead of taking a green token or an evade, rolled all blanks. And so I gave him 2 points right off the bat, and I wasn't clear on how I needed to approach that list with my list, and so he just kind of picked me apart. He had much better target priority than I did. He picked apart one of my Fangs with barrage rockets at range 2 and 3, which is not what the Fangs want to do, and it was nasty. If anybody actually watches that game on YouTube, just say a quick prayer for me.
But it is up on YouTube, so if you do want to see it, you can watch.
Yes,
that.
if you're into that kind of terrible torture, then whatever. I'm not gonna yuck your yum, but whatever.
And what did you have going on the first round, Dexter?
Yeah, so the first round, I feel like compared to a lot of the community, I'm a much newer player. I started this May. For May the 4th, it's actually my brother's birthday, so we were going to Chaotic Good, the coffee shop, and that's where a lot of the Lexington players play. So that's actually how I got into it earlier this year. But the guy that I was playing the first round is a very new player. This was his third or fourth game. And so there was a lot of honestly just trying to help him through it. I think the final score was 9-1. We played a little bit slower. I didn't worry about. I didn't necessarily take it easy, but I wasn't as stressed about focusing on a lot of things because I could tell right from the jump helping him that this was going to be a game that was very one-sided. Especially if I wanted to, and I didn't want to do that. It ended up still being one-sided, but I wanted to make sure that he felt welcome to play. It was a tournament, but the win is a win. It doesn't matter if I get 20 points or 9 points. And so it was a lot of fun. Helped me get in the mindset. Helped me get some more practice. I don't get to play as much as I like to all the time. Usually just a game, sometimes 2 a week. So it was good for that, but it was mostly just this is a list that I've been flying for a long time. Fortunately. And unfortunately, I only really fly Republic. That's all I own, so I'm pretty familiar with it. But just getting into the groove of the day for that first one.
That's all right. I can understand that because all I've got are Imperials, so that's what I fly, and you learn the game that way, and hopefully we'll pick up and we'll get better. I think both of us have kind of surprised the Lexington crew with how quickly we've picked up on this.
Yeah, honestly, we're all just tickled that you two have jumped into the learning curve as well as you have. I know there for a while Dexter was going to a couple of tournaments and just getting beaten like a baby seal is sometimes what we say. And I know Chris, you had about a good month and a half where you were getting clobbered as well, and so the last couple of tournaments that you all have been in, it's been great to kind of see this success translate, especially this weekend.
Yeah, it was definitely a nice weekend, and that we'll get into placements later. I think part of that does actually have to do with the fact that I did get that bye. That is kind of something that factored into it, but it is the reality of the game. Sometimes that does happen. Sometimes it's better lucky than good. But then, what did you face up in the second round? Because I did not get to see what you had going on in the second round there, Chris.
So I played against Gordon, one of the other members of the Stay on Target podcast, also a longtime player out of Louisville. And he was flying a 5-ship resistance list with three of the Y-wings. I think 2 of them are the 3-pointers, and he had 1 4-pointer. He had Elo Asti, the T-70 X-wing, and he had Lando in the Millennium Falcon. And Lando's big deal is when he performs an action, then other ships within a certain range of him can also perform actions. And so at Initiative 5, he can, being able to do like a pretty well knowledgeable decision on what other ships need to do as bonus actions. It's a super coordinate, basically. And again, I am still learning my list. I was able to get Gordon to shoot at Benthic with most of his stuff, and Hera's ability to pass those tokens, able to change a blank into an evade or change eyeballs into evades, really kept Benthic, the U-wing, alive. I think he took 3 shots and several, one at range 1, a 4-die attack at range 1, and a couple more, and he only had lost like 3 of his he had 5 health down and 3 hull left.
Okay.
And so at Initiative 5, he can, being able to do like a pretty well knowledgeable decision on what other ships need to do as bonus actions. And so at Initiative 5, he can, being able to do like a pretty well knowledgeable decision on what other ships need to do as bonus actions. And so at Initiative 5, he can, being able to do like a pretty well knowledgeable decision on what other ships need to do as bonus actions. And so at Initiative 5, he can, being able to do like a pretty well knowledgeable decision on what other ships need to do as bonus actions. And so at Initiative 5, he can, being able to do like a pretty well knowledgeable decision on what other ships need to do as bonus actions. And so at Initiative 5, he can, being able to do like a pretty well knowledgeable decision on what other ships need to do as bonus actions. And so at Initiative 5, he can, being able to do like a pretty well knowledgeable decision on what other ships need to do as bonus actions. And so at Initiative 5, he can, being able to do like a pret For like that many shots for a U-wing, that's really good. And so that's exactly the exchange that I wanted. Gordon knew it. Gordon thought that he had lost the game, but I had flown my Finn Rao way too far away from him being able to contribute. I got him within range 1 of all of Gordon's U-wings, which is exactly where I wanted him. I think Gordon might have put a damage on him, but the only way that Finn Rao could escape was to go further up the board, and not get caught in a bump, and so that took him out of the game. With the Falcon closer to my board and Finn Rao closer to his side of the board, I couldn't get Finn Rao down there far enough to be able to contribute to finishing off Lando, and because of that, he had the lead in objective points and came out on top. It was definitely, again, it's kind of a learning curve for me. You know, I was still trying to figure out what was going on. But Gordon, after that first exchange, made the right calls to finish up the U-wing, and then I think he got Boudica Venge right off the bat, and then that was the end of that. I couldn't finish off any of his ships, and it was a strong victory for him.
Yeah, I think you're talking about objectives there, and that was one of the issues that I was running into in my game, because I was playing John Stevens, and that is actually something that is on the stream, on the YouTube channel. You'll be able to see that, and he was playing strong on the objectives. I mean, he was playing First Order, which is vastly maneuverable. I mean, that is one thing that they do very, very well, and because of that, he was able to just absolutely control the objectives, and I thought I was going to lose that game. I really did, because I'm pretty much chasing him around the board and not really getting great shots off. But towards the end of the game, I got a couple of lucky shots off, which actually allowed me to knock out some pieces and just barely take that lead. Now, I will say, for anybody who does watch that video, that is the sloppiest table play I have ever done. I am knocking things over. I am picking pieces up off the board before marking them, and I don't know what was in my head at that moment. I have no idea, but I am not that clumsy, and I am not that stupid. And I mean, I'm just really lucky that I had an understanding opponent, because, man, again, that was some very, very sloppy table play on my part. And if you watch the video, you will know exactly what I mean, and you will say, you know what, he did not deserve to finish as well as he did just for that. What did you have going on, Dex?
Yeah, so round 2, I played Chris. Forgive me, I don't know everybody's last names, but he was flying an Empire list. He had Zartik Strom in the Advanced X1. He had Lytton Dree in the Heavy, Juno in the Advanced X1, and then Sane in a TIE Fighter, the LN Fighter, and then Marek in the Advanced X1. He flew Lytton Dree kind of right down the side at me. So I had most of my pieces lined up on, from my perspective, the left side of the board, and he lined up the Heavy right across from me, of course. Throw that right in my face, take a reinforce, and hope nothing gets through that. And then he lined up everybody else except Juno kind of in a swarm, and then Juno a little bit off on the other side of the board. And one of the big things that I think helped end up, this was a close game, as I think my third and my fourth game were both ended up being recorded. You'll see those were both also very close games. But this one, I don't know if it was the second round or the third round, but he flew in from the middle of that swarm, banked in towards my left side to get shots on my crew, of course, and he brought Juno in behind them, and Juno was just outside of range 3. And Juno is the ship that he uses the thread tracers on, which is big in this list. So he didn't take any target locks with the rest of his ships. As you can tell from Zyrtec and Marek, they're both the TIE Advanced X1s, so they really need those target locks. And Juno not being able to get that range 3 shot in with the thread tracers and try and get those target locks lined up for everybody meant I don't know exactly how much damage he dealt, but he undoubtedly would have killed Kickback that turn. That was the closest ship to his crew. And instead, Kickback got out with, I think, still 2 or 3 health. And this wasn't even a chance, so he didn't even get half points for that. So I think that was a big one. I actually made a pretty big mistake flying in this one, in my opinion, which is partially just because with the medium bases, this is a list that I've been flying for a little while, but I still just, compared to a lot of the players, I don't have the same flying experience. So I ended up doing a 3 bank, trying to bank Oddball in front of one of my ships. And I had Contrail next to, or not Contrail, I had Wilhuff next to him, and Wilhuff, of course, is a 3, he flies first. And I see Wilhuff land, and he was also a 3 bank, and I was like, he didn't land far enough ahead of those ships on the right for Oddball to clear it. So then Shock T flying in behind Oddball at 4, or not behind Oddball, behind Wilhuff at 4, flies in, and I boost with Shock T to hopefully give Oddball enough room to land. And lo and behold, comes Oddball's turn to move. We mark stuff up, and Oddball would have landed perfectly in front of the rest of my list, and instead Shock T is now sitting right where he wants to be. So it ends up a self bump that didn't need to be anything except an Oddball, focused shot. And so that one didn't help anything and made the rest of the flying a little bit sloppier, because instead of Oddball being out front where he could just boost up ahead and stay within range for selfless but make sure that he's the front target, he ended up flying towards the back of the list the whole time. But luckily I was able to come out that one, I think the last round. I don't know if there was a change in points or it just came out really close, but all my games on Saturday were very, very close ones.
So then we move into the third round, and Dexter and I are going to have a good conversation here, because we were actually the ones facing up against each other. That is actually on the YouTube channel, so you can check that out. But I'm going to go ahead and stay true to form and let Chris start us off here and tell us about his round 3 experience once he unmutes himself.
Hi, that's the button that works. So I played Jason, and I too don't know everybody's last names in our area, so forgive me, Jason, for not saying your last name. But he's one of our Lexington locals, and he was flying a first order list with Kylo in the silencer, Commander Malorus in the TIE FO. He had Whisper in the he had a TIE Whisper, and he had Vonreg in the TIE Interceptor, the First Order Interceptor. In that particular game, I had a very good setup. I had almost made another mistake with Sabine, because I got super aggressive with her running towards a area control point that he was not near on his side of the board. But I underestimated how close his Kylo could get to her, and he took a range 3 shot at her, and I thought, oh, okay, here's 2 more points I'm giving up, because I'm just really, really silly with flying Sabine so aggressively. But she lucked out. She came away with just 1 hole remaining, and so I was able to fly her off and keep her around that control point, gathering points for the rest of the game. And in the exchange, I actually did get a really good since he had committed Kylo into the middle and the rest of his ships were just kind of coming in from the outside. I was able to catch Kylo within a firing arc, within like a kill box, and I think I got him to 1 or 2 hole before he escaped. But that was plenty, and because that meant that he was going to have to keep Kylo out of the game for basically the rest of the game, and then I was planning on turning and killing his Von Reg, who had come in aggressively the next turn. But and let me start off by saying this. I know Jason. He's a good dude. And so what had transpired, we were able to talk through and resolve as friends. And I'm looking forward to playing with him in the future. However, in that game, he got wrapped up in the fact that he could not kill Finn Rao. And it took his mind off the game, and it stalled the game out. Because of that, we didn't finish round 3 by the time ended, and I felt like that was a poor competitive issue that had happened, because if we had played like normal, we would have gotten to round 4. More than likely, I would have won because I had the better kind of setup for the next kill, and we were equal in. We were equal in objective points, and we're going to be equal in objective points the next round. So I felt like I had all the advantage going into the next round. He was too focused on his frustration with his play, and that stalled our game and brought it to an unfair, in my opinion, an unfair conclusion. And like I said, we talked about it afterwards. He recognized, that his portion of play, and neither one of us were playing super fast by any means, but I think we had a really healthy and positive conclusion to that, and again, I'm looking forward to playing with him again. So I ended up with a tie. Is the end of it.
Funny you should end up in a tie as well.
Yeah.
Because Dexter and I ended up in a tie, and the first thing that you're going to notice if you watch the video is the setup was odd. I guess I should preface what the setup was all about, because me flying the Decimator, I want the big rocks out of my way. And so I come in with gas clouds, and I will take my opponent's rocks and put them in the furthest corner that I can possibly put them in, which is still not, all that terribly far. But in both, round 3 and round 4, my opponent decided that it was a good idea to go ahead and compound that by making it a briar patch over there. And so essentially you're building a no-fly zone for the Decimator. And I don't know if that's good or bad tactics. I think I personally probably need to, rather than put it in my corner, I put it in my corner because my thought process is I want it behind me. I don't want to have to think about it once I fly through. But on the other hand, if I put it in my opponent's corner, then I don't have to fly over there either. So I don't know. The big thing is that I want to place as many of their rocks as possible, because I don't care about the gas clouds, which is why I bring the gas clouds. There's very little chance that that's going to affect my Deci. But unfortunately, because of that briar patch effect, Dexter did a great job in forcing my placement on my bombers, and ended up setting up a joust with my bombers and his fleet. Yeah, not any one ship, all of them. And did a really good job taking advantage of that. I mean, what were you seeing from your side of the board at that start?
Yeah, so I fly kind of the same way. I don't fly a large base ship, obviously. I've got 1 medium and then 5 smalls, but the way that my list works, they kind of have to be all together, or at the very least in 2 groups of 3 that are still kind of close to each other. And so, with my experience in past and in the first and second round, I always kind of try and put the obstacles together because it's just easier to keep the whole group together, the fleet together, as you call it, when I don't have to worry about an obstacle in my way.
You can
And so
tell
I
I
saw
play.
you.
You can tell I play Armada because I refer to it as a fleet rather than a squad. But
Yeah. And I saw you doing that, and I said, I'm going to take my opportunities where I can get them because I have faith in my list being able to, especially since you didn't. I know you have Vader, but I don't think Vader in this situation was likely to initiative kill at least first engagement any of my ships. And if I have all of them, I can get off a lot of 3 dice double modded shots in that first real engagement round. And so I was willing to take the joust. I think most times I'm willing to take the joust with the way my list is set up. And then even more fortunately for me, because you placed Vader a little bit further out, I was able to get that original joust and not even worry about Vader shooting that first turn.
yeah, there was
So yeah,
there was a very good reason why, and I think you picked up on that pretty quickly when I started moving in. Was I moved Vader slow that first turn and had him way over there because I wanted to trigger that objective. And we're what is it? Satellite array yeah, we had to turn on the link there, and I used an activation with Vader to turn that on, and then Vader got involved in the conflict. But I needed that point consistently as the game went on, especially because, like I said, you melted those bombers. And I was having a lot of.
Quick clarification: it was scrambled or transmissions,
Thank you.
and I get those two. I get those two mixed up all the time. And the only way that I can remember them now is like I have to remember that you're scrambling the transmission with your action around the satellite objective.
But yeah, now I did pump a lot of fire into Axe that second turn, and I needed Axe to die that first turn, which did not happen.
yeah, and that's I think some context too is Chris and I we're both local to Lexington, and so we have played each other a few times. That's actually, I don't know if the mic picked it up, but that's how I kind of started our game. Was Chris and I played each other twice with these lists. The first time I won, the second time Chris won, and I was like, we gotta decide it today.
And we didn't.
Best of 3, and we didn't. So we'll need to play again and figure out whose list comes out on top. But in the first time, Chris had a little bit. I think it may have been his first time flying the Decimator, and so you had some trouble with flying it through the obstacles, and you didn't bunch them super tightly. The second time, you'd improved greatly, and you had really leaned into the reinforce aspect, and I targeted the Decimator again after the first game, and it cost me. So this time, I went in with the mindset that Vader's expensive to kill in terms of amount of shots taken. Decimator with the reinforce is expensive to kill. It's not expensive to kill as a bomber, so even if it's worth a lot less points, I'm going to take it. And I think that paid off a lot. I feel like if I had been a little bit heavier in the objectives, especially contesting that middle one, I might have been able to tilt it. But that, like you said, that early objective claim with Vader on turn 2 ended up definitely bringing a lot of points in for you, since we stayed away from that for the rest of it.
And I mean, Vader was fantastic that game. That is the only reason I drew, was because you did flip that middle objective at one point, but because of Vader's initiative 6, I was able to flip it right back and keep control of it. Otherwise, we don't draw. You win. I mean, you hands down. You had me outgunned that game, and you did everything right there. I couldn't figure out the right way to approach it. I was trying to avoid Oddball, which we had mentioned earlier. I did not want to deal with him. I wanted to hit the targets that I thought I could kill. I think my target selection was correct. I did have a little bit of bad luck in those finishing shots, because I think there were a couple of times when I really thought I had Axe done, and Axe was not done, and so I had to waste more fire on Axe.
Yeah, that's, and I think one thing that's beautiful that I really like about my list as well, compounded with that maybe Oddball should be a little bit more expensive, is I'm flying the 6 ships, and with the 6 ships, it's 4 points for Oddball, 4 points for Shock T, and 3 points for everybody else. So if you get Axe, it does hurt a little bit because I can't get the double mods as easily on kickback. But And ultimately, at the end of the day, I lost 3 points. I've still got 17 points flying on the board, and that's part of what I love so much about the way that this list works. And Republic in general. That's why that's the one that I bought into is a lot of fond memories of the clones and the Clone Wars, and then just the way that it works with such cheap ships that are able to work together. That you lose one of them and you just keep trucking on.
But we'll move on to the final round. Where what were you up to there, Chris?
I was 2 losses, 1 tie. So just really, really digging it hard in the salt mines.
So in other words, you were doing your best Sean O'Donoghue impression.
Now, Sean did play for the final for the
Oh yeah,
for the tournament.
Absolutely. Nobody does salt like Chris or Sean. I'm sorry. Yeah, Sean
runs the salt mine.
Yeah. He doesn't mean anything by it, but man,
his salt is especially funny salt. So long as we all know him and we know it's all funny, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't do that around people that he doesn't know, right? And so with him, being exuberant about his game with Dexter, which I'm sure Dexter's gonna share some of the things that Sean said to him. But he only does that with us because he knows that we all know him well enough to know that he doesn't really mean it. He's just doing it for performance's sake. Half frustration, half performance,
I'm still just glad that he wasn't in the car with us on the way. Or Dexter rode in the other car and Sean was in my car, and that was the way things should be.
Keep the peace.
Oh man, my round 4 was up against Ethan Emmick, and he 3 of the top 4 builds I think were Republic, right? Yeah, yep. That kind of says something about it. And wow, I just flew unusual that game. There were a lot of 5Ks for my bombers, and my bombers lived a lot longer than they should have lived, and it drove Ethan mad. And I think that threw him off his game a little bit too. He was just, why don't they die? They're sitting there on 1 hull. Why don't they die? You've got 2 crits on him. Why is he not dying? And those 2 crits were important to the game because we forgot them, and he probably would have Anakin would have survived if I own up to my fortunes and the mistakes that are made. So as I've said before, there was a lot of luck that went into me coming in second there, but I did get the win over Ethan, and a lot of that it wasn't piloting error that led to that. It was errors in remembering triggers and effects that were on the board. And it happens, and you really wish it hadn't happened, but both of us were kind of like, well, we're not going to win. Whoever won the game between Dexter and Sean was going to win the entire event. So it was an experience. I think actually I might have had one path to victory, and that would be if they drew. And I don't even know. I don't even know if that would have. Well, yeah, I guess that would have. But it was one of those.
It would have been a really wonky strength of schedule call.
It would have. But either way, I was just flying. You know what? Let's see what this does. Here, hold my beer. And it ended up paying off. But then
For context, Ethan is my son. He's been playing for years, and he actually won the store championship at Chaotic Good earlier this month. And so he he felt like he was flying pretty good that day with a pretty much off meta list. It was definitely not something that you see a lot in meta wing winning big tournaments and stuff. But yeah, just some dice luck didn't go his way, and the 5K threw him off. He thinks sometimes he thinks that he has, he's a precognitive on what everybody's going to do with their ships and something, and then if you do a hold my beer maneuver like that, it throws him off, and so I had. We didn't get a chance to talk until this afternoon about it, and so he had to relive all his salt about that game, and it was fun, kind of reliving it with him.
So, what do you want to tell us about the championship there, Dexter?
Funnily enough, I'd say it came down ultimately last round. Sean and I both scored points. And the way the points worked out, I came out 1 point ahead, 15-14. And a lot of the things that decided the game were similar to kind of what you mentioned. Dominated some of the other games today. There was one big one, and this was the premium sea salt in the salt mine on Saturday. Was Sean early on forgot he had his kickback. He was flying kickback, Oddball, Padme, Jag, and Sicko. So definitely not running this list the same as I am. But he had some of the same key pieces in there, kickback and Oddball. And he had kickback behind Padme, and he dialed in Padme, I think a 3, maybe a 2, and he dialed in kickback 1 ahead, and kickback slammed into the back of Padme. I think kickback took a damage and also couldn't take an evade, which if you're familiar with kickback's SOC card, similar to Oddball, he can kick those evades out to anything within range 2, and he takes a strain for it. And so at the end of the game, kickback had ended up dying by exactly 1 damage, killed to the last hole.
Wow.
And so he felt it there. And I don't remember, I think his Oddball also died to the very last damage. So at the very least, both of those would have taken an extra shot, and who knows how the game works out if I have to devote extra firepower to get damage in there. But because of that misstep in filing those in, and then with Sicko, there were a few turns, I think it actually happened twice throughout the game, that he forgot to put down a sickening maneuver. Not even put it down, but he forgot to say anything about it. If he had mentioned it and then later it came up, I would have been like, yeah, I think, you said something, but he forgot to say anything or put it down. And so there was twice that game that Sicko kind of just kept getting pushed out. In that last turn, he just pulled Sicko out of the way and tried to make sure I couldn't get a shot no matter what. And so I think a lot of our game ended up coming down to those triggers, both in very trigger-heavy Republic lists, trying to make sure we remember everything. And that ultimately, was the deciding factor. I think one other big deciding factor in that last round was both of us getting greedy, trying to get points to ensure the win. So the scenario is he has, it's chance of course, he has Padme, and he does a 3 Talon with Padme to turn her around and face back at me. She doesn't get her evade because it's a red, and she doesn't get any mods, but he thinks he needs the points. Similarly, I'm not sure if it was my axe or my kickback. I think my kickback had already died, my axe was still alive. And my axe, I do a 2 straight, hoping to be able to take an evade and pass it, instead of like a 4 straight and just getting him out of there and keeping him safe, because he was at 4 hole, so 1 more hole gives Sean a point, and dead gives him 3 points. And so both of us get kind of greedy there, trying to keep our pieces in play around that middle objective. My Oddball lands for the first time in this game, and probably the first time all day that I can recall. He gets that veteran turret gunner shot off, and Oddball, in his first shot forward, takes Padme from 5 health, the 3 hull and 2 shield, down to 2. So I get 2 points for Padme right there. And in his back shot, the first back shot of the day, he kills Sean's kickback and gets me another 2 points. And so Oddball in those 2 shots, with 1 focus between the 2 shots and no other mods, pulls off a 4-point swing, and I end up winning 15-14. So that was a deciding factor. And in hindsight, if I had not kept Axe so close, then he wouldn't have gotten the 2 or 3 points there. And also for him, if he had pulled Padme out, then I wouldn't have gotten 2 points there. So who knows how it would have worked out. But that's one big thing that I've noticed in a lot of my games, and it played big in this one, was getting greedy at the end with some of those pieces when we already both knew it was the last round while we were in that dial phase. But ultimately, I came out on top.
And you definitely, at that point, you do face tournament fatigue. Granted, it's not the biggest tournament there, but fourth round without any breaks, yeah, you're gonna start missing things, and so that's where practice just kind of flows into it, because your list instinctively, and it practice also factors in the early game. I mean, as Chris can tell you, he was not experienced with the list, and it was not a great day because of it. Do you feel like you've gotten more comfortable with that list now, Chris?
Yeah, I do, and more importantly, I felt like it was fun flying that list. I am normally a person that either flies well value large or medium ships, or I fly a lot of things in blocks, so I can do like an alpha strike. That's my typical play pattern, and so having this combination where I need my ships to be within range 2 of Hera, so that Hera can protect them and or boost their attacks, but also be within range 1, but also not get melted by barrage rockets. That's a new and interesting challenge for me, and I had a lot of fun figuring that out on the fly, and it's definitely something that I'm going to get a couple more reps in before Adepticon.
All right. Well, we're coming close to time for the end of the show, so I am going to need to say good night to you guys. I want to thank you again for being on the show, and congratulations, Dexter, for a very well-earned victory there.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for being on the show, and we will talk again at a later date.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for having us.
So, thank you again for tuning in to the show tonight. Again, we'll have the replay on YouTube a little bit later on once I get everything going. I do want to thank everybody who's watching tonight, and I do want to remind you that, of course, Tuesday, assuming that we get the table, I think there may be a Halloween event going on at Chaotic Good where we normally set things up. So hopefully I will be able to set up the stream and run a game on Tuesday night. On top of that, on Thursday night we're going to have Armada, so you'll see some video there. And I know Chris had mentioned, I should have kept him on long enough to detail, there are going to be a couple of tournaments coming up this month, one which will be at Chaotic Good, one that will be elsewhere, so definitely we'll have the stream on the one at Chaotic. Actually, I may not, because I may be out of town on the time that they're doing the one at Chaotic Good, so we'll just have to cross our fingers and see what we've got going on. But either way, I will let you know what events are going on and let you know what you can find out. I apologize to my Armada folks tonight. We did not really have any Armada content. I could talk about how horribly I got beat on Thursday because I do want to tell a brief story here before moving on. Jeff is a great player, great guy. He apologized when he came to the table with 6 hammerheads and a Carillion Corvette and General Riken as the commander. And I had no idea how to approach that. The simple fact of the matter is that, yeah, while in the grand scheme of things, if you ram with a hammerhead, onto an ISD, the hammerhead gets the worst end of that deal. But you know what? They don't care when 6 of them ram you and fire shots into you. And so, yeah, it didn't take long for him to chew me up. He didn't get through my fighter squads, but, you know, the thing about it is that, yeah, I can shoot a bunch of fighters at somebody, but if I just take down one ship that gets to stay on the board for the rest of that turn anyway, it doesn't make a huge difference. But it was a lot of fun. I learned something. I'm not sure what I learned, but I did definitely learn something from that experience. So I'm looking forward to what we've got going on Thursday. I'm not sure who we're going to have on the stream. If you check out this past Thursday's video, you are going to get to see Garrett and Ruben going up against each other, who are both excellent players, both, you know, highly competitive. So it is definitely the kind of game that you want to take a look at if you want to learn a little bit about how, you know, the meta goes and how to play the higher level of Armada that I am just not there yet. So once again, I am going to say good night to you guys. I should have this posted up a little bit later on YouTube. And I hope you join me next week. I hope you'll subscribe to the channel. And, you know, check out YouTube and subscribe to that channel too. There are links here also that you can send me an email, or you can join the Facebook page. I would love for you to join the Facebook page so that we can start some discussions on there. Also have a Discord channel that you can join on that. Yeah, I've got everything, don't I? Except an audience. So, thank you again for watching, and have a fantastic night.